Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more ancient lore. Today we are diving back into Thrice Greatest Hermes. Again, I think we're going to wrap up today, but we will see where time takes us. I thought we would wrap up in the last one. We are going to be reading from Thrice Greatest Hermes, Volume 2, as translated by G.R.S. Mead. This is freely available on the internet. The link is in the box down below. We are in Volume 11, or Part 11, and hopefully we'll get to 15. Let me get my glasses. All things, then, being thus, there's nothing stable, nothing fixed, nothing immovable of things that are being born in heaven or on the earth. Immovable, God alone, and rightly alone, for he himself is in himself and by himself and round himself, completely full and perfect. He is his own immovable stability. Let's take that down a little bit. His own immovable stability, nor by the pressure of some other one can he be moved, nor in the space. For in him are all, and he himself alone is in them all, unless someone should venture to assert that God's own motions in eternity. Nay, rather, it is just immovable eternity itself, back into which the motion of all times is funded, and out of which the motion of all time takes its beginning. God, then, hath ever been unchanging, and ever in like fashion with himself hath the eternity consisted, having within itself cosmos ingenerate, which we correctly call sensible. Of that deity this image has been made, cosmos, the imitator of eternity. Time, further, has the strength and nature of its own stability, in spite of its being in perpetual motion from the necessity of itself reverting to itself. And so, although eternity is stable, motionless, and fixed, still, seeing that the movement of this time which is subject to motion is ever being recalled into eternity, and for that reason time's mobility is circular, it comes to pass that the eternity itself, although in its own self is motionless, on account of time in which it is, and it is in it, seems to be in movement, as all motion. So that it comes to pass that both eternity's stability become moveth, and time's mobility becomes stable. So may we ever hold that God himself is moved into himself by ever same transcendency of motion. For that stability is in his vastness, motionless. For by his vastness it is his law exempt from change. That, then, which so transcends, which is not subject unto sense, beyond all bounds, cannot be grasped, that transcends all appraisement, that cannot be supported nor borne of, nor can it be tracked out, for where and when and whence and how and what he is known to none. For he is borne up by his supreme stability, and his stability is in himself, whether be God or the eternity or both, or one in another, or both in either. And for this cause, just as eternity transcends the bounds of time, so time itself in that it cannot have bounds set to it by number, or by change, or by the period of the revolution of some second kind of time, is of the nature of eternity. Both, then, seem boundless, both eternal, and so stability, though naturally fixed, yet seeing that it can sustain the things that are in motion, because of all the good it does by reason of its firmness, deservedly doth hold the chiefest place. The principles of all that are, therefore, God and Spirit. The cosmos, on the other hand, in that it is movable, is not a principle. For its mobility exceeds its own stability by treating the immovable fixation as the law of everlasting movement. The whole sense, then, of the divinity, though like to him in its own self immovable, doth set itself in motion within its own stability. 'Tis wholly incorruptible and everlasting, and if there can be any better attribute to give to it, eternity of God supreme, in truth itself subsisting, the fullness of all things, of sense, and of the whole of science consisting, so to say, with God. The cosmic sense is the container for all the sensibles, all species, and all sciences. The human higher sense consists in the retentiveness of memory, in that it can recall all things that it hath done. For only just as far as the man animal has the divinity of sense descended, in that God hath not willed the highest sense divine should be commingled with the rest of animals, lest it should blush for shame on being mingled with the others' lives. For whatsoever be the quality, or the extent, or the intelligence of a man's sense, the whole of it consists in the power of recollecting what is past. It is through his retentiveness of memory that man's been made the ruler of the earth. Now, the intelligence of nature can be won by quality of cosmic sense, from all the things in cosmos which sense can perceive, concerning eternity, which is the second one. The sense of this we get from out of the senses cosmos, and we discern its quality by the same means. But the intelligence of quality itself, the whatness of the sense of God supreme, is truth alone, of which truth not even the most tenuous sketch or faintest shade in cosmos is discerned. For where is aught of it discerned by measurement of times, wherein are seen untruths and birth and deaths and errors? Thou seest then, Asclepius, on what we are already founded, with what we occupy ourselves, and after what we dare to strive. But unto thee, O God most high, I give my thanks, in that thou hast enlightened me with light to see divinity. And ye, O Tat, Asclepius, and Ammon, in silence hide the mysteries divine within the secret places of your hearts, and breathe no word of their concealment. Now, in our case, the intellect doth differ from the sense in this, that by the mind's extension, intellect can reach to the intelligence and the discernment of the quality of the cosmic sense. The intellect of cosmos, on the other hand, extends to the eternity and to the gnosis of the gods who are above itself. And thus it comes to pass for men that we perceive the things in heaven, as it were, through a mist. As far as the condition of the human sense allows, 'tis true that the extension of the mind which we possess for the survey of such transcendent things is very narrow still, but it will be most ample when it comes to perceive with the felicity of true self-consciousness. And so ends 11, and what we got out of this one was again the reiteration that God is, right? God is all things. He is me, he is you, he is the space between me and you, and he is the space between me and you. He is all matter, he is all atoms, he is all of the things that make up all of creation. But you are different. Animals and plants have their purpose, their soul's journey. I believe that there are souls involved, and I don't know the extent of it. I'm not there, right? But there is something there. There is a progression that happens. The incorporation of those things makes them a part of you, and that means that you become part of something else too. All of that, what this is saying is that those exist and you exist, and the thing that sets you apart from those, the things that allows you to determine your destiny, is the ability to remember things. Right? The ability not just to see them, but to know what they mean, to reason from the examples shown, the thing that might likely happen. Now, I have a whole playlist devoted to that type of thing, and it's funny to see these things placed out into these documents, right? I haven't done a whole lot of calling out like cognitive functioning and things like that in this, and there's no reason really, but that is fully what is being drawn upon here, and so it's interesting to see. Let's dive into 12. All right, so this is going to be section 12. Now, on the subject of a void, which seems to almost all a thing of vast importance, I hold the following view. Naught is, naught could have been, naught ever will be, void. For all the members of the cosmos are completely full, so that the cosmos itself is full, and quite complete with bodies, diverse in quality and form, possessing each its proper kind and size. And of these bodies, One's greater than another, or another's less than is another, by difference of strength and size. Of course, the stronger of them are more easily perceived, just as the larger are. The lesser ones, however, or the more minute, can scarcely be perceived, or not at all. Those which we know are things at all by sense of touch alone. Whence many come to think that they are not bodies, and that there are void spaces, which is impossible. So also for the space, which is called extracosmic. If there be any, which I do not believe, then it is filled by him with things intelligible, that is, things of like nature with his own divinity, just as the cosmos, which is called the sensible, is fully filled with bodies and with animals, consonant with its proper nature and its qualities. Bodies, the proper shape of which we do not all behold, but see, some large beyond their proper measure, some very small, either because of the great space which lies between them and ourselves, or else because our sight is dull, so that they seem to us to be minute, or by the multitude are thought not to exist at all, because of their great tenuity. I mean the demons, who, I believe, have their abode with us, and heroes, who abide between the purest part of the air above us and the earth, where it is ever cloudless, and no movement from the motion of a single star disturbs the peace. Because of this, Asclepius, thou shalt call nothing void, unless thou wilt declare of what that's void, which thou dost say is void, for instance, void of fire or of water, or things like these. For if it should fall out that it should seem that anything is able to be void of things like these, though that which seemeth void be little or be big, it still cannot be void of spirit and of air. In like way we also talk concerning space, a term which by itself is void of sense. For space seems what it is from that which it is, the space. For if the qualifying word is cut away, the sense is maimed. Wherefore we shall more rightly say the space of water, and the space of fire, or the space of things like these. For it is as impossible that aught be void. So is space also in itself not possible to be distinguished what it is. For if you postulate a space without that thing of which it is, the space, it will appear to be void space, which I do not believe exists in cosmos. If nothing then is void, so also space by its own self does not show what it is, unless you add to it lengths, breadths, and depths, just as you add the proper marks unto men's bodies. These things then being thus, Asclepius, and ye who are with him, know the intelligible cosmos, that is, the one, which is discerned by the contemplation of the mind alone, is bodiless, nor can aught corporeal be mingled with its nature. By corporeal I mean that which can be known by quality, by quantity, or and numbers. There is nothing of this kind in that. This cosmos, then, which is called sensible, is the receptacle of all things sensible, of species, qualities, or bodies. But not a single one of these can quicken without God, for God is all, and by him all things are of his will. For that he is goodness, fitness, wisdom, unchangeable, that can be sensed and understood by his own self, by his self alone. Without him, naught hath been, nor will be, nor is, nor will be. For all things are from him, in him, and through him, both multitudinous qualities and mighty qualities, and magnitudes exceeding every means of measurement, and species of all forms. Which things, if thou shouldst understand, Asclepius, thou wilt give thanks to God. And if thou shouldst observe it as a whole, thou wilt be taught by means of the true reason that cosmos in itself is knowable to sense, and that all things in it are wrapped as in a vesture by that higher cosmos spoken of above. Now, every single class of living things, Asclepius, of whatever kind, or it be mortal or rational, whether it be endowed with soul or be without one, just as each has its class, so does each several class have images of its own class. And though each separate class of animal has in it every form of its own class, still, in the self-same kind of form, the units differ from each other. And so, although the class of men is one kind, so that a man can be distinguished by his general look, still, individual men, within the sameness of their common form, do differ from each other. Take that, Darwin. For the idea, which is divine, is bodiless, and whatever is grasped by the mind. So that although these two, from which the general form and body are derived, are bodiless, it is impossible that any single form should be produced exactly like another, because the moments of the hours and the points of inclination when they are born are different. But they are changed as many times as there are moments in the hour of that revolving circle in which abides that God whom we have called all formed. The species then persists, as frequently producing from itself as many images and as diverse as there are moments in the cosmic revolution, a cosmos which doth ever change in revolution, but the idea itself is neither changed nor turned. So are the forms of every single genus permanent, and yet dissimilar in the same general form. And does the cosmos have a species, O thrice greatest one? Hermes, dost thou not see, Asclepius, that all has been explained to thee as though to one asleep? For what is cosmos, or of what doth it consist, if not of all things born? This, then, you may assert of heaven and earth and elements, for though the other things possess more frequent change of species, still even heaven, by its becoming moist or dry or cold or hot or clear or dull, all in one kind of heaven, these too are frequent changes into species. Earth hath, moreover, always many changes in its species, both when she brings forth fruits and when she also nourishes her bringing forth with the return of all the fruits. The diverse qualities and quantities of air, its stoppings and its flowings, and before all the qualities of trees, of flowers and berries, of scents, of savors, species. Fire, also, brings about the most numerous conversions, and divine, for these are all formed images of sun and moon. They are, as it were, like our own mirrors, which, with their emulous resplendence, gives us back the likeness of our own images. And so ends 12. And what do we get out of this one was there is no such thing as missing. Everything is. Everything is part of God. We just talked about that. And that is the space between me and you and the space between the space. That means what was being said here, right? This is my first time ever reading this particular passage, but this is doctrinal for me. God is all of the things. He is the space between me and you and the space between me and you. He is the void and the vacuum. There is no void and vacuum. There's just something we do not yet understand. There is nothing that we can discern between Earth's outermost atmosphere and the moon. But there is something there. There is something that holds it in place, and it is the waters above. Now, the waters above are a mystery, right? We have the waters here. We breathe the waters of the air. There are waters under our feet. Everything is just a different vibration. Everything breaks down into atoms and individual particles whirling around a nucleus by electromagnetics, right? You are not actually solid. Nothing is actually solid. It is the illusion of solidity, right? The cohesion of molecules gives the appearance of solidity, but still, anything solid is still moving at an atomic level. There is no absence of anything. There is something to fill that void. We just don't know how to measure it. So, whatever it is God. We don't even have to know what it is. I am sure people will one day discover whatever it is that fills the void. It won't be me, right? I'm not experimenting in that type of a nature, but there is something, and that's what it's telling you here again. And then it's telling you once again that man is set to do the experience of the here, right? To be aware of these things, to remember these things, to incorporate all of this knowledge into your life. But to keep into mind that you are here for a purpose and to walk in a way, right? All right, into 13. Let's go. But now, let this suffice about such things, and let us once again return to man and reason, gift divine, from which man has the name of rational animal, lest to be wondered at are the things said of man, though they are still to be admired. Nay, of all marvels, that which wins our wonder most is that man has been able to find out the nature of the gods and bring it into play. Since then our earliest progenitors were in great error, seeing that they had no rational faith about the gods, and that they paid no heed unto their cult and holy worship, they chanced upon an art, and whereby they made gods for themselves. To this invention they conjoined a power that suited it, derived from cosmic nature, and blending these together, since souls they could not make, they set about evoking demon souls, or those of angels, and thus attached them to their sacred images and holy mysteries, so that the statues should, by means of these, possess the powers of doing good and the reverse. For thy forebear Asclepius, the first discoverer of medicine, to whom there is a temple hallowed on Libya's mount, hard by the shore of crocodiles, in which his cosmic man reposes, that is to say his body, for the rest of him, or better still, the whole, if that man, when wholly plunged in consciousness of life, be better, hath gone back home to heaven, still furnishing, but now by his divinity, the sick with all the remedies which he was wont in his days gone by to give by art of medicine. Hermes, which is the name of my forebear, whose home is in a place called after him, doth aid and guard all mortal men who come to him from every side. As for Osiris's spouse, how many are the blessings we know Isis bestows when she's propitious? How many does she injure when she's wrath? For that the terrene and cosmic gods are easily enraged, and that they are created and composed of the two natures. And for this cause it comes to pass that these are called the sacred animals by the Egyptians, and that each several state gives service to the souls of those whose souls have been made holy, while they were still alive, so that the several states are governed by the laws of their peculiar sacred animals, and called after their names. It is because of this, Asclepius, those animals which are considered by some states deserving of their worship, and others are thought otherwise, and on account of this the states of the Egyptians wage with each other frequent war. Asclepius. And of what nature, thrice greatest one, may be the quality of those who are considered terrene gods? Hermes. It doth consist, Asclepius, of plants, and stones, and spices, which contain the nature of their own divinity. And for this cause they are delighted with repeated sacrifice, with hymns and lauds, and sweetest sounds, tuned to the key of heaven's harmonious song. So that which is of heavenly nature being drawn down into the images by means of heavenly use and practices, may be enabled to endure with joy the nature of mankind, and sojourn with it for long periods of time. Thus it is that man is the maker of the gods. But do not, O Asclepius, I pray thee, think the doings of the terrene gods are the result of chance. The heavenly gods dwell in the heights of heaven, each filling up and watching over the rank he has received, whereas these gods of ours, each in its way, by looking after certain things, and foretelling others by oracles and prophecy, seeing others and duly helping them along, act as allies of men, as though they were our relatives and friends. And so ends 13, and in this one we learn that there are entities, right? There are things that take possession of the idols that we make. We create the idols by taking examples from nature, as in statues of bulls, or by taking other examples from nature, as in statues of people. And we imbue in them the power to affect our lives in a way that is not really theirs until we give it to them. Until we invest in the entity has no power. The more people that invest into the entity, however, the more power that the entity has, and you see that run rampant across the world. God is God is the whole. He is beyond anything that you can make a statue of. He is beyond anything that you can make a statue of. If you can make a statue of anything, it is from God, but it is not God. That was the gist of that whole section, right? God is greater than these mortal gods that we give the power to. That does not take away the fact that empowering the entities creates a powered entity. That does not take away from that at all. 14. What part of the economy, thrice greatest one, does the Hermes, or fate, then occupy? For do not the celestial gods rule over generals? The terrene occupy particulars. Hermes. That which we call higher meaning, Asclepius, is the necessity of all things that are born, bound ever to themselves with interlinked enchainments. This, then, is either the effector of all things, or it is the highest God, and what is made the second God by God himself, or else the discipline of all things both in heaven and on earth, established by the laws of the divine. And so these twain, fate and necessity, are bound together into one another mutually by inseparable cohesion. The former of them, the higher Morini, gives birth to the beginning of all things, and necessity compels the end of all, depending from these principles. On these doth order follow, that it is their warp and woof, and time's arrangement for the perfecting of all things, for there is naught without the interblend of order. That cosmos is made perfect in all things, for cosmos self is vehicled in order, or totally consists of order. So then these three, fate, necessity, order, are the most immediately affected by God's will, who rules the cosmos by his law and by his holy reason. From these, accordingly, all willing or not willing is altogether foreign, according to God's will. They are not moved by wrath nor swayed by favor, but are the instruments of the eternal reason's self-compulsion, which is the reason of eternity, that can never be turned aside or changed or be destroyed. First, then, is fate, which, as it were, by casting in the seed, supplies the embryo of all that are to be. Follows necessity, whereby they are all forcibly compelled unto their end. And third, order comes, preserving warp and woof of all the things which fate and which necessity arrange. This, then, is the eternity, which neither doth begin nor cease to be, which, fixed by the laws unchangeable, abides in the unceasing motion of its course. It rises and it sets by turns throughout its limbs, so that by reason of time's changes it often rises with the very limbs with which it once had set. For its sphericity, its laws of revolution, is of this nature, that all things are so straitly joined to their own selves that no one knoweth what is the beginning of their revolution, since they appear for ever all to go before and follow after their own selves. Good and bad issues, therefore, are commingled in all cosmic things. And so ends 14. And what we got from this one was that life is the balance. It is the beginning and the end, warping and weaving, right? Creating the tapestry that is our life. Our life affects other people's lives, and we intertwine for a time, and sometimes we separate, and sometimes we keep going, and then other people enter in, and it changes the pattern just a little bit. That is basically what's being said here, right? That everything intertwines, everything is ordered, everything is structured, there is a plan, and all of these things work together. Then these three, fate, necessity, and order, work to create God's will. It's a wonderful thing, and it is, again, doctrinal. And finally, we are going to get to 15. This is the last of the perfect sermon. So let's go. Part 15. And now it hath been told you on each several point, as man hath power to tell, and God hath willed it and permitted it. This then alone remains what we should do, bless God, and give him praise, and so return to taking thought for body's comfort. For now sufficiently have we been filled with feast of mind by our discourse on sacred things. Now when they come forth from the holy place, they turn their faces towards the south, when they began their prayers to God. And when the sun is setting, should anyone desire to pray to God, he ought to turn him thitherwards, and so also at the rising of the same, so that unto that spot which lies beneath the sun. As they were just beginning to recite the prayer, Asclepius did whisper, Asclepius, let us suggest to Father that what he did bid us do, that we should say our prayer to God with added incense and with unguents. Whom when thrice great is heard, he grew distressed and said, Hermes, nay, Asclepius, speak more propitious words, for this is like to profanation of our sacred rites, when thou dost pray to God, to offer incense and the rest, for naught is there of which he stands in need, in that he is all things, or all in him. But let us worship, pouring forth our thanks, for this is the best incense in God's sight, when thanks are given to him by men. We give thee grace, thou highest, most excellent, for by thy grace we have received the so great light of thy own gnosis. O holy name, fit name to be endured, O name unique, by which the only God is to be blessed through worship, of our sire, of thee, who deignest to afford to all a father's piety, and care, and love, and whatever virtue is more sweet than these, endowing us with sense, and reason, and intelligence, with sense that we may feel thee, with reason that we may track thee out from the appearance of things, with means of recognition that we may joy in knowing thee. Saved by thy power divine, let us rejoice that thou hast shown thyself to us in all thy fullness. Let us rejoice that thou hast deigned to consecrate us, still entombed in bodies, to eternity. For this is the sole festival of praise worthy of man, to know thy majesty. We have known thee, yea, by the single sense of our intelligence we have received thy light supreme. O thou true life of life, O fecund womb that giveth birth to every nature, we have known thee, O thou completely filled with the conception from thyself of universal nature. We have known thee, O thou eternal constancy, for in the whole of this our prayer in worship of thy good, this favor only of thy goodness do we crave, that thou wilt keep us constant in our love of knowing thee, and let us never be cut off from this kind of life. With this desire we now betake us to our pure and fleshless meal. And so ends the perfect sermon and part 15. And here is an interesting one, because this is something that a lot of people get wrong in a lot of different ways. The only thing that has ever been required from you for God is you. Your attention, your love, your devotion, your willingness to commit to his path in your life, the understanding that there is nothing held back from you for your detriment. Anything that is held back from you is for your greater good. Any experience that you have is ultimately for your greater good, even if it's hard to believe at the moment. And there is nothing else that God needs except you in particular. All right, the only thing he needs from you is you. That means that money is inconsequential. Incense is inconsequential. But there is a thing to keep in mind. The point of the incense is not so that God can smell it. It is because it is an appreciation sacrifice, right? The only type of sacrifice that you should ever do is an appreciation. There should never be a sacrifice required for you to be forgiven. There should never be a sacrifice required for you to get prosperity, right? You give it out of the willing love of your heart, understanding that it is not in any way a work, right? Burning a super expensive incense is never going to do anything to get you closer to God. The point of burning it is so that you are showing the thanks for what God has done, right? It is a visible sign, even if it is just to you, of something that you are willing to sacrifice for the blessings that He has shown you in your life already. Not to ask for new ones, nothing along those lines. No salvatory works ever come from any type of incense or physical thing. The only salvatory thing is you asking for forgiveness straight off the top. That's what this is telling you, and that goes for many different sacrifices. If you have made the personal choice to give up meat and have a pure and fleshless meal, then that is your choice, but that is not a requirement by God. If you have chosen to give up pork in specificity or beef in specificity, that is your choice. It is not a requirement from God. There is no obligatory sacrifice ever required for you to be saved. Period. The end. The only thing that has ever been needed for you to be saved is for you to go to God and ask for it. You can save being forgiven from the sins, right? From what you have done wrong. And you have to go and you have to say, Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you as a sinner and I ask for forgiveness from my sins. I freely accept the grace that you freely extend, and I ask you to change my life. And if you said anything resembling that and you actually meant it, then it is done. Right? You don't have to walk down to a river. You don't have to jump in the water. You don't have to have none splashed on your forehead, and nobody ever had to die. All of these things are true, and that is the same thing that is being said right here. You can make willing sacrifices. They can have outside effects, right? People can see you do the willing sacrifice, but it cannot be motivated by you trying to get the attention from the people. It is you just giving your sacrifice. That's where we're going to wrap this one up. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to an understandably complicated set of topics. We will be diving more into these topics as we get into other works. If you have works that you would like to recommend, hit me with them down below. If you like what I'm doing, hit me with it down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know you appreciate what we're doing. Let me know what you would like to know more of. If you really appreciate what I'm doing here, hit me with a super thanks, and it will be greatly appreciated. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit Steak. Peace.